off-grid living for mere mortals, even if it's not quite legal.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Offgrid Outlaw. Today I come to you from the studio because I'm going to discuss some world politics. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was how the Federal Reserve debases currency and removes the wealth from the middle class and transfers it to the 0.1%, the international bankers. Back in 1730, a professor, I believe in England, Sir Richard Cantillon, discovered the uneven effects of inflation when new bills are emitted by the country's treasury or central bank. This became known as the Cantillon effect. It's how the bankers get rich because they emit money, and this somewhat of a misnomer because it's not really money, it's baloney. It's paper notes masquerading as money, and it depends on the faith of the people in that jurisdiction to continue to use that money. Now, throughout history, fiat currencies have failed. We know about the Weimar regime. More recently, we had Argentina around 1999, 2000. They had an economic collapse. When they print too much paper, the people begin to lose faith in the value of the currency, and the currency begins to fail. So how these bankers are making money, or how should I say, they're transferring wealth from you, the middle class, to themselves. They print paper, currency, and they spend it. And when they spend it at the top tier, they get to use that currency before the economic effects of more currency chasing after goods and services is felt. In other words, inflation. They get to spend the money before the inflation kicks in. So they get the advantage of all that extra money they've created, and then by the time that money filters down to us, the prices are already going up on everything. We see it as inflation, but it is correctly termed monetary debasement. Now, I have a theory that they started this back in 1913 here in the United States, creating this fiat currency, taking us off gold and silver effectively, although that came a little bit later on. The real currency debasement really started to happen at a rapid rate after Nixon took us off gold in, I believe it was 73. But here's some data points that you might find interesting. In 1963, the minimum wage was $1.25. 5 silver quarters from that era, if you melted them down today, would be worth about $83. So that is the real minimum wage for a person to have a decent standard of living, the way a janitor did in 1963. A janitor earning that $1.25 wage could afford a modest home, a stay-at-home wife, 2 kids, a car, maybe even a small boat, and live comfortably. Now today, you take an educated person like a nurse or a school teacher making $70,000 a year, but guess what? They can't afford an apartment rent not even a simple one-bedroom apartment. It's out of reach for a lot of these people. And it all boils down to a number of factors, but the leading one is the fact that the fiat currency is worthless today. And the wages never keep up with the inflation. It's baked into the design. Now, why would these billionaires, and I predict in the next couple of years we will see officially the announcement of the first trillionaire, why do these billionaires need so much money? Why can't they live comfortably on the $100 million a year that they bring in as a salary, when the rest of us have to live comfortably on $50,000 a year or less? Why do they need hundreds of billions of dollars, billions with a B? Well, I mean, you can only own so many homes, so many villas, so many yachts, so many jet planes. So what more? It didn't start to really click into place for me until I recently saw a computer simulation of the magnetic pole shift, an event that some meteorologists and geologists feel is something that happens every 12,000 years. And there seems to be a certain amount of geological evidence to indicate that the Earth was oriented in a different plane at some point thousands of years ago. Well, when I saw the computer simulation, a lot of things began to make sense. You've heard about the migrant crisis in Europe. We're letting all the Africans into Europe. And oddly, they're paying for these people. And they're giving them housing, free food, free everything. While the taxpayers that pay the taxes and are the natives that live in those countries are getting almost nothing. And the migrants come in and they get them to live like kings. Well, it doesn't make any sense to the logical mind in a logical world, at least in a sane world. But who says that we're being run or ruled by sane people? I think it's quite possible that these people believe that there's going to be some kind of cataclysm in the next, 15 to 30 years. One report estimate puts it at the year 2046, where an event occurs where the magnetic poles, which have been shifting and accelerating for the last few years, these pole shift events reach a tipping point. And I also learned that there has to be some event that takes place from the sun, which enables the Earth's crust to become unlocked from the mantle, thereby allowing the magnetic pole shift to occur. A flip of about 90 to 114 degrees occurs. And Newton's third law, of course, dictates that an object that's not in motion will tend to stay where it is, and an object that's in motion will tend to stay in motion. Well, the oceans, because there's not a lot of friction coupling the oceans to the Earth, the oceans will pretty much stay where they are. The Earth's crust will move under the oceans. Getting back to the computer simulation I saw, which made me realize why they're emptying out the continent of Africa, I noticed that very little of the tsunami water washes over Africa. Much of the continent's largely untouched in this computer simulation. That's when I had the aha moment. So, they built these fiat currency banking systems so that they have billions of dollars, and these billions of dollars, they're going to use it to build their bunkers, to survive the event, supposedly, and then to rebuild in Africa a whole new country of just them, because they don't need us anymore. If you've heard of the Georgia Guidestones, back in the early 80s, an unnamed person who wanted to remain anonymous put up the money, have these Guidestones put up, and one of the inscriptions really stuck with me. Maintain the Earth's population at no more than 500 million people in balance with nature. Now, I think a lot of the elites are following this word for word almost. I think they want to eliminate a large number of us is a good possibility. And I think they're doing it by the old death by 1,000 cuts. Government harassing the people, making life miserable, war veterans committing suicide in great numbers because they're mistreated badly when they come back from the war, especially the disabled ones. Making the cost of living rise, making people homeless. That shortens people's life expectancy a tremendous amount. Then, of course, you've got the pandemics, which, for all I know, they could be planned, could be part of the plan. Then there's the people that talk about the so-called chemtrails, and according to my research, even the U.S. government admits that it's been doing weather modifications since at least the 1960s. They've done a lot of other horrible experiments as well on groups of the population without knowledge of the population. So who knows what it is they're spraying? People say that they want to dim the sun to reduce global warming. Well, I think what's also dimming the sun is 40,000 satellites that have been launched up there in the last 10 years, mostly Starlink, but there's 40,000 of them up there. You got to think that that's starting to attenuate even 0.02% of the sunlight reaching the Earth's surface now because of the sheer number of these satellites. Not to mention, 3 or 4 of these satellites come down every day. After their 5-year lifespan, they lose orbit and they burn up in the atmosphere. Now, a lot of people have been reporting these fireballs in the sky and sonic booms. I believe these are satellites re-entering the atmosphere and burning up. Now, there's a danger to that too. I recently saw a science video, climatologists talking about how all these materials, these heavy metals in that comprise the satellite structure itself, they break up into very, very fine particles, almost down to molecular size, and they stay way up in the upper stratosphere for fairly long periods of time, maybe up to a decade. But they're saying that it could be damaging the ozone. But another risk is that the aluminum particulates eventually make their way down to Earth. And as you know, aluminum and the human brain do not make a good mix. Aluminum in the brain causes Alzheimer's. So we have that. We have the death by 1,000 cuts, population reduction. Oh, let's not forget the big one, war. Constant wars. Have you noticed that since the formation of the Federal Reserve, the United States has been at war for almost the entire time since then? And the United States is involved in skirmishes all over the world. We've got bases in well over 100 countries. Where's all that money going? And then there's the black projects that are not in the official United States budget that even Congress and maybe even the president doesn't know about. But now we get back to the billionaires, soon to become trillionaires. These people, using all this money to rebuild a world for themselves. They're pushing AI in these data centers, and the idea is that they want to replace us with robots and artificial intelligence. When the robots come online, they won't need us anymore. And that's when they'll get rid of us. That's my theory. The idea is the slow attrition of the human species and the elimination through hundreds of different means, from wars to famines. Right now, what's going on in the Middle East, cutting off the oil supply to a lot of countries, especially Southeast Asia. Those countries are in dire straits right now because they don't have any fuel. And the other issue is they're not able to get urea, which comes through the Strait of Hormuz, a lot of it. And that is a principal component in the making of fertilizer. So without fertilizers, farmers have to abandon crops or plant less. Anyway, the bottom line is food shortages, higher prices, more people struggling. And, it's starting to all click into place, starting to make sense. If you go on the idea that there is an evil, diabolical group of people, probably less than 100 of them, that are in charge of all these activities. They run the World Economic Forum, which, their big slogan is, "You will own nothing and you will be happy." Well, I can assure you, you'll own nothing. I don't know about the be happy part, unless they're going to plan to put us all on some kind of drug. But the reality is that a large population reduction is coming, either through wars or famine or just death by 1,000 cuts. So I suspect that we are in for a rough ride. Agenda 2030 is in full swing, and a lot of people voted for the current president thinking that he was going to put a stop to this, but it seems like the president of the United States is more or less a figurehead, a puppet, and the orders come from somewhere else, perhaps Tel Aviv, who knows. But whatever the case may be, all I can suggest is batten down the hatches and get ready for a rough ride. And well, that's my rant for today. I'm going to sign off with this and just recommend that whatever you do in life, try to make it count. We'll see you all in the next one.